Okay, we will call this regular council meeting to order for August the 14th. Welcome back, everybody. And I'll ask Councillor Dunham to do the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you. And on to 2.1, are there any additions or deletions? CEO Becker?
Only a slight adjustment, Mayor Barclay and Council, if Council would consider moving 6.3 to the top of the community services reports, please.
Yep, okay, not an issue. Could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Messaros?
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? All right, carried. And we'll move on to 3.1, the regular council meeting minutes for July the 24th. And when someone's ready, I please make a motion to adopt those.
I'll move those minutes.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? No, all in favor? All right, carried. Thank you. We'll move into 4.1 with the CEO report.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. Hello, Council. As you are aware, Council, I took vacation August 3rd through 11th, back recently over the weekend. It was a nice break. Leading up to the vacation, just a few items just to bring it to your attention. Not a lot of meat to the information, but at least you're aware. Administration has moved into dialogue with TELUS as per your direction to seek further information regarding the services of TELUS and fiber, etc. So we've started that conversation, really preliminary. We expect to gather more data information over the forthcoming weeks. Also, administration has met to get update on the economic development plan, work plan, which will come through to the committee at their next regular council or committee meeting. With that, we also move into give a little bit of a toot to the Innisfail Energy Hub and get the discussion going or maintaining discussion on the Energy Hub. We've had taken a little bit of a break with the hub just due to other conflicting priorities. However, we're moving into some of our fall programming in relation to school education, but also community conversations. Again, working on a couple that will come to your attention once those logistics are finalized. Likely one will be understanding your utility bill, and then there's another one in relation to energy in our day-to-day lives. As we as homeowners, businesses can jump ahead in relation to energy management moving forward. So yeah, so that's, besides that, there's been engagements, just to list them for you. Varma and government meeting, I'll let Mayor Barclay speak to that. Fortis Industrial Subdivision, as for the bi-weekly meetings we have with Fortis, was able to participate with the Cape Executive Director luncheon engagement with Council, and the Pat Bedard Caribbean student visit that was recently held as well. So with that, if there's any questions from Council, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, can I please have someone make a motion to accept the CEO report? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'd so move that we accept the report for information.
All right, thank you. All in favor? Carried, thank you. And we will move into council action control. There's nothing to be addressed on there. I'll have somebody please make a motion to accept that. Councillor Wing.
Mayor Barclay, I would move that we accept the action report.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Then we'll go into 5.1 with Director Vickers.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So this report is to provide council with budget adjustments to our 2023 budget. So over the past couple of months, council has made a few different motions that do require some follow through with changes to our budget, and that's what this report is. On June 12th, at the June 12th council meeting, through the CAO report, administration requested a motion for Small Business Week engagement to happen in October 23rd with Justin Reimer of the Energy Reductions Alberta and Economic Development Champion Todd Hirsch, which was carried. As well as at the June 19th council meeting, administration brought forward a report for the annual environmental soil monitoring of Dodds Lake as well as the old landfill. The cost for the monitoring program is $7,000 for Dodds Lake and $18,000 for the old landfill. And finally, at the July 10th council meeting, Mayor Barclay brought forward a motion to provide welcome packages for residency doctors who complete a portion of their residency in Innisfail. That was also carried. So the following accounts do need to have their budgets adjusted to account for the above-mentioned motions. There will be, however, no effect on our contingency as it will remain at zero, as well as the transfer to reserve line that needs to be adjusted. So we're pulling from our operating reserve. With the old balance, the amount change with a new balance of $301,000. So I'll take any questions if you may have.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions about that? No? And I'll please have someone make the recommended motion.
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion. The council approves the recommended budget adjustments.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? All right, carried. Okay, and then we will move to 6.3 with the housing assessment discussion with, I believe, Mr. Morrison's online.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Barclay. So today we want to provide a preliminary review of the housing needs assessment report. This project was initiated to develop a more robust understanding of our housing environment, and the document also serves as an update to the 2017 housing discussion paper and supports work of the province with their affordable housing needs assessment. We have Scott and Shayla with BASA Social Innovations with us. BASA prepared the housing assessment and will be available to answer questions as we go through the report. Before I introduce them, I just wanted to clarify the documents in the package. So the first attachment being the full report, the second being a more visual executive summary type document that we hope will be more accessible and engaging to the public. So today we're presenting the assessment as an information item. It will then be forwarded to some of our committees as well as to the public for any comments or insights prior to coming back to council in a few weeks for final approval. So I'll let Scott and Shayla introduce themselves and provide a bit of context before we sort of dive in and walk through the document. Scott?
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon and to support Megan in the presentation of the housing needs assessment. We've certainly enjoyed getting to know the town of Innisfail and taking a look at some of your data and meeting some of your citizens. And I'm here today with Shayla Van Koenet, who did much of the work on the research and data analysis side, and our colleague Avery Atchison sends his regrets today.
All right, so the intent is we're just going to kind of walk through the document at a high level, and by all means, if you have questions as we go through, Scott and Shayla are both here to help with any of the technical information, particularly in the sort of community profile section of the document. So essentially the document structured starts out with our policy context here within the community, so walks through our existing plans specific to our planning documents, so MDP, land use bylaw, downtown ARP, as well as council strategic plan, various other social needs assessments, our perspective survey, as well as the housing discussion paper that this document serves to replace. And also touches on our age-friendly community action plan. So just sort of highlights the number of documents and different policies that we do have in play that have an influence on housing within the community. The next sort of primary section of the document, Juanita, you can even jump down to section 5. So is the community profile information. So there's a large series of various graphs and figures that give a better sense of the existing conditions and demographics within the community. Not necessarily new information for council or any of us that we do have an older population, an aging population, which is resulting in smaller household sizes, and less of that happening. The figures also outline that our median income, in comparison with others in the or the provincial average, median income is on the low side. Again, feeding in with that older individuals, typically on fixed income, or retirees where their income is not necessarily increasing. Predominance of detached dwellings within the community, again, not new information. Figure 21 in particular, if you can go to that one. Juanita highlights that over 30% of residents are renters. So when we talk about rental stock, it is impacting a large number of our residents. Rent in the community is lower than the provincial average. However, the age of our rental stock certainly impacts the quality and attractiveness of those. As we get into more of the affordability information, 18.4% of households in the community are above that 30% of their income affordability threshold. So we do have households that are struggling. The report also touches on that homelessness conversation. Again, that was a difficult, it's a difficult thing to quantify in the community. We don't necessarily have a lot of visible homelessness in the community, but that sort of invisible homelessness and folks living in transitional types of situations that aren't necessarily appropriate housing. So then we get into section 7, which is the community engagement part of the document. So extensive community engagement was conducted with the consultant, with focus groups, key informant interviews, as well as the open house we had, looking to build up some of those stories and information that we were able to receive as part of that. And then I think we'll move into, actually we'll go through, so sort of the 4 primary themes that came out of the engagement, that the report sort of fleshes out, is that housing is a priority for Innisfail to support attraction, retention, and growth. So part of the employer survey indicated that we are having businesses that are having a challenge attracting workers due to limited availability of housing, as well as feedback from seniors not being able to stay in the community when they're getting to the point where they're wanting to transition out of their current residence. The next theme, sort of housing options and development. So the community experiences limiting housing development options. In the past, essentially, land development has been single detached dwellings, whether that's directly a response to market or a response to existing policy. But that has been the housing type that has been developed for numerous years. So rental market affordability, availability, and quality are a concern. That was something that we heard throughout the consultations, was people being able to find suitable rental housing is an ongoing challenge. And then housing variety influences community diversity and life stages. So again, coming back to that conversation about having housing for seniors, when they're looking to downsize, looking to have those spaces, while still having options for younger families and those types of individuals coming to the community. So as we get into sort of section 8, the summary of the key findings of the report. So projections were developed, identifying where we're currently at in terms of our housing supply and what future needs we may have. So based on current population, housing data and stats, it's estimated that we currently have an unmet demand for about 87 housing units. And to keep up with anticipated growth, there's a projected need of at least an additional 81 housing units by 2031. And then again, section 8.2 goes into some of the primary themes around where we can focus when we move forward. So again, the rental market, focusing on being able to attract and retain new residents, and how we can support that housing market to not only expand but also improve the quality of the existing stock that we have. Subsidized housing, so we do have a limited stock of community housing, especially for smaller households, the 1 and 2 bedroom types of units. We do have a small number of units, but they're 3+ bedrooms, and are focused more on that, on the family. So being able to continue to try to provide those units. On the topic of home ownership, we do have a strong base of home ownership, and that with only 1.2% of homeowners in the core housing needs, compared to 5.3 the Canadian average. So that's a positive, but again, wanting to ensure that we maintain a diversity within that space as we move forward. So again, coming back to that diversity of housing, and especially in the market space, we know we talk about it a lot around this table, about what type of housing and where those gaps are. So based on current trends, it's indicated that an ideal mix of new housing units would include entry and mid-level single detached housing, multifamily dwellings, particularly duplex townhomes or fourplex developments, and innovative single detached seniors housing, sort of the 3 primary areas identified there. So then section 9 provides some concepts for consideration and exploration as we move forward, sort of from this document into more of an action plan. So the first one is around the concept of a housing innovation lab. So using some of the conversations that have come out of this this process, and trying to flesh some of those out to find some models or some ideas that could work in the community. Scott, I'm not sure if you wanted to add a little bit more on that concept, and what we think we could see come out of that sort of model.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. The concept is really just more deeply engaging the community that has come forward as a result of the housing needs assessment. So there's lots of folks that have some great ideas. Often innovation is stifled because all the right people aren't at the table to be able to bring solutions or ideas, or be able to work through with intention to actually bring about innovation. But there certainly was a sense that we got from speaking with folks that there's an interest or a desire to do some things differently, and maybe that because you've got some infill spaces, you've got an aging population, there's an opportunity to do some things differently, and even model some new ways of attacking the affordable housing challenge in a way that could be helpful for other communities that are facing similar situations.
So then the next section talks about innovations for affordability. So highlights a few topics that would require either policy consideration, or our bylaws and policies could be altered such that they're more supportive to some of these options. So the first one being prefabrication. So certainly a lot of innovation and forward movement in the space sort of for prefab houses, away from the typical manufactured homes that were commonplace more in the 80s and 90s. So that's something that could be looked at. Environmental sustainability, again, sort of building on the work with our Innisfail Energy Hub, and how we can encourage homeowners and local builders to utilize those in improving the housing stock. And then looking at improved affordable housing through innovative employment and training programs. So opportunities to partner with educational organizations in terms of supporting that type of affordable housing. as well, there's a whole host of other sort of non-traditional financial models that could be explored to support individuals in terms of purchasing homes. Talks about some innovations sort of more specific for seniors housing. So there were recent changes to the MGA that support sort of the Golden Girls type of living arrangement. The town's bylaw is currently quite permissive in this space. Other communities are less so. But again, there are ways that we can encourage or facilitate the development of these types of living arrangements for folks as an option to age in place, as opposed to needing to move into more of an institutionalized setting. Accessory dwelling units, so secondary suites are always sort of touted as a big way to increase dwelling units without having huge impacts on neighborhoods, with essentially being sort of that invisible density. Again, we're seeing lots of improvements and innovations in more of sort of backyard suites as opposed to the typical basement suite. So again, ways to work, not necessarily within our land use bylaw, because again, our bylaw is quite permissive for the development of secondary suites, but how do we support homeowners in developing these projects or navigating that process if they're interested. Then infill, which we've talked about as well, is highlighted as an opportunity. So continuing to work within our infill policy, and again, raising awareness or how we can lower barriers to that type of development. Repurposing old buildings and retrofit projects are other opportunities. The final one being, policy for recondition of removal of vacant and derelict buildings. We've talked about this as an option as well, in terms of creating a disincentive for property owners to leave either dwellings vacant or in poor repair, or basically infill lots being left vacant because the taxes are low cost and they can do so. So essentially that's a high level run through of the document. There's a lot there. There's a lot of graphs and tables and things like that. And again, this document's not necessarily intended to tell us what to do, but to sort of set the stage as to what the current situation is as we move forward and try to action some of these items.
All right. Thank you, Director Jenkins. Did you have anything to add, Scott, at this point in time, or?
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. No, Megan covered the last point that I was about to make, was that really focusing on the needs assessment as opposed to the strategies moving forward. The innovation section was just a little add-in bonus based on what we had heard.
That's perfect. So thank you for this report. I guess my question would be, how do we move forward? I don't think it's any secret that we need housing and all sorts of housing, but you know, where do we start, Director Jenkins or Scott? And do we review bylaws and start there, and then we need to have, you know, discussions with people like Bethany, with Red Deer Housing Authority, with developers. It's great to say, oh, we need all this, and we can go talk to the community, but is that going to get anything built? Because it's probably not necessarily community members that are going to be building, it's going to be builders that will be building. We have labor shortages, we have all sorts of things going on. So I'm curious how we move forward and get past, yes, we need housing, to, okay, this is what we need and here's how we're going to do it.
Well, and I think we talked about this a little bit as we were reviewing the document, is you know, there was some language in there about, okay, from here we'll build a strategy, and it's like, I think we want to go from this to try to create sort of a bit of a short-term action plan that we can do a few things, and yeah, we're not going to solve everything overnight, but what can we do to target, you know, maybe it's 10 starts or 5 new build starts in a calendar year. You know, what do we have to do to make some of the policy changes that we have done in the past 5 years? Because you look through this assessment, you look through other housing strategies. It's not that we haven't done some of the changes. It's not that our bylaws aren't necessarily structured such that they'll allow things, but how do we get that out to the appropriate people and facilitate the process to make those sort of small changes? Yeah, that would be my thoughts.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, I think just to sort of follow along that line in thinking about the work and the priorities that I mean, we're currently working on our municipal development plan. That's
Yes.
going to be a body of work that takes some time, but I really hope that we can embed language in that plan that it really enforces everything that we've spoken about, from, you know, from land use to structure plans right down to what those options and opportunities would be. And then our land use bylaw, it seems to me, is something that, but the key for me right now is the municipal development
Yeah.
plan. I think that's going to be a really important body of work for us.
And that's a key point, and that, you know, Avery had highlighted that in some of our conversations, is that, you know, sometimes those higher level documents, we don't, you know, yeah, they're there and they're high level, but our current municipal development plan is very much structured to result in what we have, which is single detached dwellings across the community. So those policies do matter. And yeah, they're not going to change it overnight, but that is the language that's still in our current document.
Councillor Bates.
I've got several things here. So as I went through the report, there was 2 or 3 things that caught my eye, and I'll just mention them. I'm not looking for answers specifically, but one of the things that caught me by surprise was to see the drop in household income. And I'm not sure if that's related to the demographic of age and that sort of thing, but another one was the attractiveness of the Innisfail rent rates. But then that, on the other side, makes me wonder how attractive it is for a landlord to build. There was some mention made, page 39, of some challenges of the logistics of real estate of the city-owned development. I'm not real sure what that's about, but that caught my eye. Certainly reflect all the way through it about fellow seniors, I'll call them, and maybe me someday, looking for that smaller residential move. Another thing that it affects me personally when I think about it, I happen to now have owned an EV for about 8 months, and it's become apparent to me I would not want to own an EV without a garage. And my understanding is the feds are shooting for 25% new cars to be sold by 2025 or 26 to be EVs. So I think there's going to be an overriding influence that is going to drive some changes that we haven't seen yet. And yeah, I'd want a garage and my own charger, or I probably wouldn't own one. As we talk about affordability and sustainability, my fellow councillors have heard this one before, but not connected to those. I think one of the things we need for sustainability is income as a town. And we've sought a lot of that through franchise fees, and I do believe as we go forth, however the housing evolves, that will become a more important aspect to our income and to people's expenses. I also believe if there's more of a trend to multi-generational living, that that could have a reflection on house size going up to some degree. I'm not sure about that. And then as I look ahead, where do we go? I see our three major developers in a stall mode. One of them is selling. One of them seems to be concentrating, the other two, I guess, seem to be concentrating in other communities. And that concerns me. So that's just a big run of stuff, and thank you.
I'll only just comment on one. The section you made about the housing developer and that is in the community engagement session. So that was some of the feedback we heard, again, going back to that, you know, the town acting as developer, that competition type factor. So that was essentially a documentation of some of the feedback heard.
Okay, so I guess I would ask, how do we move forward? Like, how do we start getting some action items, and what's our next step? CEO Becker?
So I guess
Sorry,
for the
Director
next
Jenkins, sorry. Okay.
few weeks, we'll sort of finish the consultation and the finalization of this document, and then be, sort of looking forward to next year, but yeah.
And with that, Mayor and Council, administration has had preliminary chats in regards to your strategic planning session coming up in later part of September. And we wanted to have lead-in discussions with you leading up to that day. Housing being one of your highest priorities. We'd like to have we'll be prepared. We'd like to have some engagements with you prior to that day, just to kind of flush out some of those opportunities. We've had some experiences with, for example, the 4 homes in Hazelwood. Is that something council would like to consider moving forward? You have the southwest residential area. Is it a residential area? Is that something you wish to move forward with a vision that's being slowly developed? So those types of things will be listed for you and we'd like to get into a little bit more discussion.
Okay, thank you. And I think, I don't know, I mean, we have 4 plexes in town that are sitting empty. We have an apartment building with a chain link fence around it that's sitting empty. We have rental property. It's just a matter of how do we get owners to move forward and do something, or sell it if they don't want to look after it anymore. But, and we have developers like, that have stalled out, and so we have all these things sitting there, but we don't have somebody that wants to necessarily push forward. Councillor Wing?
Just a question for administration. CAO Becker, do we actually have, or would it be possible to have a bit of an inventory that sort of points to those areas in the community where there are either vacant lots or not being resided in, so that we have a bit of a picture of, you know, and then also wondering about something that indicates what some of the federal and provincial grants look like relative to housing right now, and are there any industry incentives as far as, you know, renovations with green energy and that kind of thing?
Mayor Barclay, to Councillor Wing, yes, that's part of our administrative discussions, was to have a better understanding of the grants that are being promoted currently. So this may tie into the work of BASA and administration, but, you know, whether it doesn't we know housing is your priority. So there's 2 things happening. One is to conclude the process for this assessment and the public engagement, but also moving forward with the housing. So yes, so we'd like to do further analysis discussions in preparation with you, Council, prior to the September 21st strat planning session. So that's what we're working on currently.
Okay. Would Bethany also be a priority on the list to have a discussion with empty land sitting there? Not sure that's been transferred back to them or to Parkland yet, but I think that would be certainly a priority. And I know at one time they did talk about, you know. Well, I mean, that land was transferred to the government, of course, back in the day when that building was built. It was supposed to be transferred back. I don't know whether it's been transferred back, but if it hasn't, why not? And I think that should be something that, in my opinion, that the board should be on top of, and finding out why it's not getting transferred back, because it's a prime location for build out that campus. Councillor CEO Becker?
I just want to reiterate, I know Scott's probably thinking as a consultant that don't work into strategy before, but so again, I just wanted to reiterate two things are happening. Let's work towards achieving this housing needs assessment, which we do know the needs. A lot of data there is useful for us to engage and complete this process. Making sure that we're not advancing, your consideration to advancing housing development that may conflict with this or the MDP and your aspirations with doing something different. So again, just want to highlight that there are a few things going on and we don't want to make sure these pieces do not conflict with each other.
Yep, fair enough. Just housing inventory is getting shorter and shorter every day, it seems. Anyway, okay, so we'll just have somebody, I guess, make a motion to accept this report as information. And thank you to Scott and Director Jenkins and the team for all the wonderful work they did on this, and appreciate it very much.
Mayor Barclay, I would make the motion to accept the report for information.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. We'll move into group service rates with Director Jenkins with the PACE bus.
Request essentially received from Sunset Manor. So as we know, we transitioned to new service provision for our PACE transportation service in April. Again, the transition has resulted in a standardization of processes and rate applications that has impacted some users. Sunset Manor has indicated that the application of the $5 per passenger per trip rate has resulted in their group activities becoming cost prohibitive. Previously, they would be charged $5 for a one-way trip for the busload of people from Sunset. So the new service, again, based on the way it is structured, requires that consistent application of fees. The report also has a letter and correspondence from Sunset sort of outlining their concerns and the impact that the change has had on their ability to offer those services to residents. So based on administrative conversation, we have suggested that if council does wish to present or to move forward with a reduced rate for larger groups, that a discount code could be created that would essentially provide a 50% discount for groups of 6 or more. So for example, this would result in a $2.50 one-way trip per person in town, or $7.50 per person per trip for out of town. So this would be if they were going to the RCMP Dog Training Center or to Penhold or something like that. The bus capacity does have capacity for 14 people, less depending on how many wheelchairs or mobility devices are required. Large group trips to other destinations, so Red Deer Olds, those out of town, can't be accommodated with the current structure of our service. So the large bus essentially staying in town to service, with the small van being what we keep available for the out-of-town medical appointments and those types of service. The recommendation from administration would be that this rate be applicable to all larger groups in the communities, not only seniors or those in the seniors facilities. So again, in terms of service level impacts, schools, seniors groups, and others may be able to more readily utilize the service. The service has averaged 62 trips per week over the last 4 weeks. Again, a substantial increase in usage since the service changeover. Yeah, we're seeing increases almost every week. I think I was before council in June talking about the Sunday service, how we had, hardly anyone using it. 7 people rode the bus yesterday on Sunday, so it's coming, and there's more and more usage on a regular basis. On the financial side, so the service is already subsidized for local operations at a rate of approximately $46 an hour, based on an average of 2 passengers per hour. So again, additional fare reduction would reduce that revenue and the availability of the vehicle in town if it's, sort of doing more of these larger group trips that would take a fair bit of time. Even us internally have had to utilize contracted transportation services in order to do our youth programming, those types of things. It's a cost, and based on the way the current service is structured with the contractor, we aren't able to just use the bus the way we used to and, use it for the day and not have it available in town. And then again, just highlighting that we do have the fee assistance program available for qualifying residents to utilize up to $200 towards recreation, leisure, or transportation costs. So that is a way to offset those costs for transportation. So really looking for feedback from council as to whether they would like to move towards a reduced rate for the bus for those larger group excursions.
Director Jenkins, have you had conversation with Sunset Manor and Autumn Grove and the likes on?
Yeah, so Sandy has had
Okay.
ongoing conversations with Autumn Grove and Sunset. She's gone there personally, actually with representatives from Prairie as well to go through the service and how to access it and those types of.
Okay, and are we still getting feedback on booking the service? I don't necessarily mean from the facilities, but individually, are we still getting some?
We do get some,
okay.
yeah, occasionally. We had kind of a bad week a couple weeks ago. I don't know if everyone was on vacation at the call center, but less and less. And, they're quite responsive when we do have issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this out there a little bit off topic, but still on topic. So it's really, I think, come to my attention these last few months, helping somebody here in the community. And we have all these programs with the Community Partners in Action and the town of Innisfail. We have transportation, but it's not easy for people necessarily to access the transportation if maybe there's some cognition things going on or something. Yep. So I think of movers and groovers. I think of the men's shed. I think of all these things. And are we able to get people there? And if the answer is no, and I think in some cases that is the case, that people can't get there, how do we, as a municipality or the programming people, how do we set things up so that there is transportation available for people, that they will pay for it, but that it's kind of set up for them maybe to say, okay, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I know I can go to Movers and Groovers at 10 o'clock, and I know that bus will be coming to my house at 9:30. Like, is that even possible, do you think, or?
Well, you can book 7 days in advance. You can do things like that. I think it is a challenge to try to find a balance between an on-demand service and then sort of a scheduled shuttle. So that's,
But I think that's the issue I'm bringing up, Director Jenkins. I mean, we talk about this age-friendly community, and there's people falling through the cracks because they're not able to book themselves. Like, it would just be overwhelming for them. And how do we reach those people and pull them into our community where they participate in the community? And I don't need an answer today, but I just want to leave that with you to kind of think about. And I'm sure there's more than one. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, and through to council and administration. Yeah, I fully support the reduction by half the rates, particularly at Sunset Manor, because a lot of those folks that's the only way that they can get out. And if it's cost prohibitive, I think we should look at reducing the rates so it makes it more lucrative for them to be able to get to their groceries, get to their appointments, that kind of thing. I've always said, and I'll say it again, transportation in a community, you don't make money on transportation. It's heavily subsidized, and I go back to this here. So I would certainly support a motion if it comes up that we reduce the rate by 50%. Thank you.
Are you making the motion?
Yeah, I'll certainly make the
Okay.
motion that we approve the 50% rate reduction for large groups, 6+ accessing the PACE transportation service within the service zone. And to that, you've heard my verbiage around why I support it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harrison. Anybody else have any more comments? Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Further to Councillor Harrison's motion, with Sandy and through to
Me.
Megan Jates, will 50% make a difference to it? Because from reading the letter and from what's been said, it sounds like that even a 50% reduction will not affect, that they still wouldn't be able to do it, that would be cost prohibitive to it. So is there a way for us to maybe explore what would be affordable for them and then base our motion on that?
I guess, to me, that's sort of up to council. I think if we make it a whole lot cheaper than that, the vehicle's not gonna be available for everyone else. And we obviously have the statistics now to back up that there's a lot of other people that need the service as well. And is it an excursion vehicle, you know, comparable to the Legion's van that's what it's for? Or is it for people getting around, first and foremost for their, you know, their groceries, their medical appointments, those types of things, but that is totally your discussion.
And I would also add, I believe Sunset Manor, I don't know if they still have a bus. They certainly did have a bus. It's not a handy bus, but they do have a bus. And I think when you read the letter, it's not that it's unaffordable for the residents, it's unaffordable for Sunset Manor because it's coming out of their recreation budget. They're not charging
Yeah. So,
people living there for
and
the
that's-
recreation.
this is second or third hand, that
Yeah.
Sunset's bus, it's cost prohibitive for them to operate it.
Councillor Bates.
Well, and I was just trying to look at it in the broad context of what was given to us here for information. And then hearing that, if Sunset were to charge them $2, $2.50, whatever, and if these people avail themselves of the subsidy, they get 80, 100 trips a year free, if they're not doing something else with their $200. So, I mean, you have to look at the whole big package, and I think that's more than reasonable if we create that rate. And who knows, we may be sitting here addressing this in another and trying to massage it again for some other reason. Maybe it's overused.
Anybody else have comments? No? Okay, so we have a motion to reduce the rate 50%. All in favor? Okay, carried.
Mayor Barclay, may
Yes.
I? Just in relation to your comments regarding kind of out-of-scope service or something that ties into transportation for those of need, I know you had mentioned to think about, but is it, again, I want to make sure it's clear, is it to think about, or is there an expectation? Is there a deferral to the age-friendly committee, for example, or just want to make sure we're not just going to have a chat thinking about it, or what's your expectations?
Well, I'm guessing you're having some conversations around transportation because of feedback we're getting on pay. So I would maybe leave that with you and your team and Sandy, the age-friendly coordinator, to think about it. And, you know, like I said, I don't know logistically if it's even possible to have a route, you know, that coincides with programming, but I think there's a lot of players around that table that would need to be talked to about that and whether it's even feasible or not. But so I wouldn't have any specific direction at this time, but maybe you'll come back sometime with more information about that. Okay, so we will move on to my favorite topic, 6.2.
All right. Still on? All right. So this agenda item is to update council on recent Government of Alberta announcements to pause all Alberta Utilities Commission's approvals of renewables projects until March 2024. So I'm sure most of council has probably seen a news article or two with respect to this generations approval pause regulation that was enacted on August 3rd that stops the AUC from granting approvals for renewable power projects, so wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, and sustainable biomass projects over 1 megawatt, until March 1st. The AUC has been directed to host an inquiry to gather evidence about the impacts on agriculture and environmental lands, impacts on pristine landscapes and viewscapes, the requirements for reclamation security, development on crown lands, and the impact of renewables on the supply mix and system reliability. So The town currently has a 2-megawatt solar generation facility planned for the Southwest Industrial Expansion area. The application for this project was intended to be submitted later this year, with construction possible in mid to late 2024, pending appropriate budget approvals. The pause will impact the potential timeline of this project and the nature of the town project, i.e. it's on a brownfield site, it's within the urban boundary, and it has a relatively small footprint at 6 acres. Does not seem directly related to the concerns the province is looking to explore. The AUC is going to be accepting feedback until the end of this week, and administration is requesting support from council to make a submission relevant to our project. If council wishes to provide further feedback either to the AUC sort of on the decision in a broader context, or to some of our local government representatives at the provincial level, they can do that as well. So.
Thank you, Director Jenkins. So what, in this motion that we have before us, I would also like to add in there that that there'll also be correspondence going to Minister Dreeshen and Minister Schultz from me. And I would like that framed around where we are in that project, the process right now, what stage we're at, how much we've expensed, and of course the revenue loss that we will experience because of this moratorium, or who knows what it ends up with eventually. But so if I could have somebody please make a motion.
Mayor Barclay, I would move that council accept the report as information and direct administration to submit feedback to the AUC respecting the town's planned solar generation facility, to include correspondence to appropriate ministers. I would like to add Minister McIver into that list. So we have Dreeshen, Schultz, and McIver, to inform them of the current status of the project.
Okay. Councillor Bates.
Well, she beat me. I was going to make the motion, but I just wanted to point out, as I look at, and when I first heard this, 2 weeks ago, it surprised me too that they're doing it. But of the items, the reasons for doing it, there is one that would still apply to us, and that is the last one, which relates to the fact that if, I think they're looking at, if we create the green energy, and ours being solar, then they got to have the backup energy if that's not available. So the one item that of the 5 that they, on page, I got it on my, it's in their announcement, right, August 3rd. The 5th item is one that they'll probably say would apply to us, because it doesn't matter that our land is ours or that it's not suitable for anything else. The 5th item, considerations of the impact, increasing growth of renewables, to have the reliability, I guess. So I'm just pointing that out, but I'm fully supportive, was ready to make the motion.
All right, sounds good. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, all in favor? All right, carried. And we'll move into 6.4 with Director Jenkins on the Partners in Climate Protection report.
So this report is to update council on the progress with the town's participation in the Partners in Climate Protection Program, and to provide an overview of the community and corporate baseline inventories. So we joined the Partners in Climate Protection Program last July. It's a voluntary program administered by FCM in partnership with the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. And has only over 250 municipalities a part of that program, making a public commitment to reduce emissions. The program consists of a 5-milestone framework to guide municipalities in reducing greenhouse gas emissions at both the corporate and community level. So the 5 milestones consist of creating a greenhouse gas inventory and forecast, setting the emissions reduction target, developing a local action plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring progress. In order to gain recognition for milestone 1 of the program, communities need to complete 2 emissions inventories, so a corporate emissions inventory. So that's activities that we have direct control over. So this includes our municipal government facilities and operations, such as buildings, streetlights, water distribution and wastewater collection, fleet and corporate solid waste, as well as a community emissions inventory. So this is emissions that the residents and businesses of the community create through their activities. The town as an organization does not necessarily have control over these emissions, but may be able to have influence through planning and programs. So this includes residential, institutional, commercial, industrial sectors, as well as transportation and community solid waste. So a community and corporate emissions data has been compiled, submitted, and approved by the PCP program for the years 2020 and 2021. So the attached report outlines the quantities, or how the quantities were determined and will serve as reference for our future inventories. Inventories for 2022 and 2023 will be completed sort of as we move into 2024. Again, the attached report, and will kind of peruse through it quickly, really includes the methodologies for how each of the different components of the emissions are broken down, as well as predictions for future emissions and associated indicators. If you want to just go back to the report page, Juanita, there's just a couple of pie charts there that come right out of the tool and are quite telling, I guess. Just this is part of the corporate emissions, so this is our energy usage as the town, as an organization. So buildings accounting for 69% of our emissions, followed by water and wastewater, vehicle fleet, solid waste, and then streetlights being the big components of our emissions. So we can see where our building operations and the efficiency in those buildings is really where we have the biggest ability to impact those emissions. And then if we want to just look at the report. So this is based on the year 2020. So essentially breaks down the corporate and community emissions, and then provides an overview of the various methodologies. Again, some of the emissions we have great data for. We can take our electricity bills. We can directly convert those into emissions. Some of the things that are more difficult come into solid waste is one that's difficult, particularly on the corporate level, because we don't specifically get weights on the town's production from our dumpsters, and we do at the community level, because we get the weigh tickets when they go in. The town doesn't actually operate a landfill, so we're not including that specifically. But again, as we get a little bit more sophisticated moving forward, we'll be able to improve some of our methodologies to be more accurate and more specific to those activities. So I'm just going to go through. Juanita, if you want to go to page 140 of the report, sort of gives us the overview of our various inventory, or of our various buildings. The biggest, again, being the arena and the aquatic center, essentially are our two largest contributors by far, and then sort of going down from there. On the residential side, again, it's challenging. A lot of the community inventory is based on estimations and assumptions. So we are able to get ATCO and Fortis data for the community. ATCO, they don't like to break it down too specifically, so we get sort of residential and commercial and industrial. Things like road transportation, a lot of it is very much based on assumptions. So for road transportation, we take the number of households based on provincial average number of vehicles registered per household times the average number of kilometers driven by a vehicle. So a lot of those aren't necessarily really telling specifically in an Innisfail context, but it still allows you to think about the impact or the amount of emissions coming out of the community. So in terms of emissions forecasting, so part of the process is to prepare sort of a business as usual scenario. So if the community does nothing, what is the anticipated impact on emissions? With that change, for us, it's largely going to be based on population growth if the community grows, and then the change with coal-fired generation. So as the electricity grid eliminates coal, our associated emissions resulting from electricity use will go down. That's one of the large reasons whenever there's comparisons that per capita Alberta is by far more GHG emitting than provinces that are generating electricity from hydro or cleaner sources. So some of the sort of trends that could influence that business as usual forecast, Councillor Bates alluded to electric vehicle sales. So current data indicates that vehicle sales in Alberta is below the national average, but electric vehicles continue to increase with 7.7% of new vehicles registered in 2022 being EVs. So as that percentage continues to increase, if it does, there's going to certainly be an impact on that electricity usage side versus the gasoline side and what those impacts are as well. Waste to energy is something that could have a big impact for our community if that's what, if we're able to move forward with that process, or even on a provincial scale if that's something that moves forward in terms of removing those methane emissions from the profile. Hydrogen also represents an opportunity to replace fossil fuels as a carbon-free energy source. So what role hydrogen plays in the coming years will also have a major impact on our emissions profiles. Just sort of an overview of some of the changes and contributions that the town has made in the last few years, more particularly towards our corporate inventory, but again, the installation of our rooftop solar on municipal buildings. So this year we'll be able to hopefully be able to start to quantify some of that impact. The panels at the fire hall have been connected since the first part of May. The curling rink ones were just interconnected about a month ago, so we're just going to start to be able to see some of our bills and see the impact of those installations. The purchase of the plug-in hybrid that I think is supposed to show up sometime in the next couple weeks. Yeah, soon. The electric ice resurfacer at the arena, conversion of streetlights to LEDs, replacement of all of our interior building lighting with LEDs, upgrades of the furnace and control systems at the arena. Again, those updates just happened this spring, so again, we won't, likely be able to quantify the impact of those until next spring. Support for the solar farm, expansion of public transportation, automated curbside collection with waste, recyclables, and organics, support for Varma and the waste to energy facility, exploration of net zero aquatic center development, and the 1.5 megawatt solar PV planned for the new industrial park, as well as the exploration of the SEEP program, which would be something that could impact sort of at a community level if we're able to support residential and potentially commercial property owners make changes to their properties to increase their energy production. So essentially we'll be continuing to do this work to document and do these inventories each year and be able to report back to council. So milestone 2 and 3 to me are quite interrelated in terms of setting an emissions target and creating an action plan, because I don't think we should set a target if we don't think we can do the actions, or we shouldn't probably set actions if they're not going to achieve a target. So starting to look at what those are and how we can include those considerations in some of the decision-making.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Councillor Bates?
Yeah, how big is our industrial solar farm? Because we're about to write to the government about 2 megawatts and it just says
It's
one.
between 1.5 and 2, so we'll put the specific what's going to be in the AUC application, yeah.
Thank you.
So on the electricity side, Director Jenkins, like, is there a portion of that that's assumed to be coal? Because I believe this year, 2023, will be coal-free, which is 7 years ahead of schedule.
Yes, so when the calculation for Alberta, when you do however many kilowatts times their conversion
Okay.
factor, it's taking into account the mix of the energy grid. So as coal comes out of that, our energy mix
Okay.
becomes better, yeah.
And as you move forward into milestone 2 and 3, looking for action, would that be, I guess we don't really know yet, but I think of parking lots that we have that could maybe have solar arrays. I mean, that's the cheapest form of energy, and there's so many opportunities, right? That
Yeah, and we have looked at other, pieces of underutilized property and how we can start to make the best use of those. The project in the industrial park sort of being kind of the first of that, to give us an understanding of that process and what the revenue generation capability could be from those types of facilities that aren't sort of directly related to a load, like our rooftop installs.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see the data once you start collecting it on the rooftop generation and what that means to us. So, yeah, so thanks for all your work on this. That's a lot. I'll just, if there's no questions or anything, I'll have somebody make a motion, please, that we accept this report as information.
I'll make that motion, please, Mayor Barclay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Messaros. All in favor? Carried. Next one, Councillor Bates. We'll take a look at 7.1, please, the correspondence and information. I just want to point out this first one here, Innisfail and District Victim Services. So, letter came from Chairman Bourne, and as you can see, there's a lot of positives coming out of the Victim Services Initiative now. Director Bourne and her vice chair, and the ED, they had a meeting with Victim Services, Alberta Victim Services, and I think when they went into the meeting, they were, maybe not too hopeful, but came out feeling very, very hopeful after their discussion, and they've had a couple of follow-ups since then. So they have sent this on for us to see, and I think it sounds extremely positive. A lot of changes have been made since this initial foray into this regional model, and yeah, so that's good. Just shows you that advocacy actually does work sometimes. And just keep going down. Juanita. Then we've got the Innisfail Eagles and the Sports Hall of Fame are having a golf tournament coming up. So do we want to be a sponsor? I think did we do that? Did we sponsor last year? I think we did a whole sponsor, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I'd have somebody, if you wish, to make a motion that we do a whole sponsorship, or whatever level you think.
I would make that motion that we do a whole sponsorship this year.
Okay.
For the Hall of Fame and the Eagles Golf Tournament.
Councillor Bates?
I just have one question. Is that what we did? Because
I believe so.
I'd be all in favor of doing whatever we did.
I'm quite positive that's what we did last year.
Yeah, I am too. Okay, so we'll do a whole sponsor for $325 then. With a golfer, CEO Becker, you can go play or have one of your staff go play. Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. paper. There we go. Okay, and then this is just a feedback, received the email from AHS after community meetings. And I think the rest is just letters, is it not, Juanita, from government and stuff? So, yeah. So we'll just have somebody make a motion to accept the correspondence as information, please, if there's no further questions. Councillor Dunham?
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion that we accept it as information.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. And we will go into council reports, and we'll begin with Councillor Bates.
Okay, I'm going back. July 27th, I attended the Cape Executive Director Introduction Meeting, I guess I would call it. Followed July 29th, the Saturday, I went to the air show, which was the first in Red Deer in 20 years. That surprised me. It was a good show, and there were quite a few volunteers on the ground from Innisfail doing logistics and a couple of food trucks, etc. The Water Commission didn't have a meeting, and of course the horseshoe lessons were canceled. Look forward to those being rescheduled. On August the 9th, I attended the Historical Village meeting in place of Councillor Heistad. They're extremely busy, tons of bookings, and very happy with their bookings and their personnel this summer, and they just did a casino last week, and so they're really a busy group. September the 8th, they have their Field and Forage Partnership marking prohibition scheduled, and September 23rd, and Juanita will send it to fellow councillors, they just handed me a piece of paper. They're promoting Doors Open, which is basically an event to invite people to see the inner workings of as many organizations, businesses, etc. around town as we can. And they're full on into that with an organizational meeting planned for the 17th. I volunteered that the town would certainly support them with advertising in the town voice for both their functions. The second one, this Doors Open, it needs to have that meeting before it really gets defined. I gave the CAO a heads up on this a few weeks back, but I'm curious, now that we're this far into the year and past June 30th, do we have a comparison of taxes that were in arrears or not paid versus 2022 versus 2023?
Yes, we do. Just delaying.
Mayor Barclay, through to Councillor Bates. I actually had this prepared at a previous council meeting because I was told you'd be asking and then you didn't. So it's probably sitting on my desk somewhere. So if you give me a few minutes.
Oh, that's okay. You can say it. We'll catch it later.
Okay.
But I would like to know that, because I think it'll be a bit of an indicator as to whether some people are.
Yes, Councillor Bates, so I will be bringing the second quarter financials next Monday, and there will be an excerpt in the report to indicate the taxes.
I can wait till next Monday.
Okay.
This week I have MPC, and I'm planning to go to the Enhance Energy in Alex, and hopefully the weather holds and they have their Hillside Vibes on Friday. I plan to go to that as well. That's it. Thank you.
Right, thank you. And Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yep, I also went to the Cape Executive Director intro, and this week I'm going to Westfine Meets Tour tomorrow. MPC, Policing and Safe Communities Committee, and I have some exciting news about FCM. I was chosen to serve on 2 committees, and those 2 committees are the Standing Committee on Community Safety and Crime and the Standing Committee on Environmental Issues and Sustainable Development. part of the commitment includes serving on a regional caucus and on a rural forum, and also then on something called the Committee of the Whole. So it was kind of shocking to see the commitment that's involved when you put your name forward. And I believe that I don't know, I couldn't find in the terms of reference how long the commitment is, if it's 1 year or 2 years. The list of directors' meetings goes through until November 2024. And the first set of meetings happens to be scheduled exactly when I scheduled my vacation. So I will be taking 3 meetings while I'm away, and the meetings that I cannot attend, I will be receiving recordings for them. So I think I will be able to catch up. It feels pretty overwhelming right now. There's a lot of information, a lot of background documents and so on. But I'm excited to be serving on this, and thank you for letting me put my name forward.
Okay, congratulations, Councillor Messaros. And we
Thank you.
look forward to hearing lots about FCM. Councillor Bates.
Yep, Your Worship, I have a question. I'm trying to remember, with Councillor Heistad away, with the police and safety community, we have 2 reps, and if one's away, only one goes. Isn't that how that's like, we don't have an alternate?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I as well attended the Cape Luncheon for the ED introduction. Luckily, I had an opportunity to meet Tracy earlier on in the year at the Kananaskis Economic Development Conference, so it was nice to see her again. On Tuesday, August 1st, I attended the CSSC committee meeting where we looked over 3 applications for funding, and that was it for me. I will not, unfortunately, be able to attend any of the functions this week as I will be out of town preparing for a function on the weekend.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to Council and Administration. I had a fairly couple quiet weeks. One of the things that did come up was as a result of the fire that evening there. I did give an interview to the paper. I was asked the question around what the town was going, or what the town should be looking at moving forward with that. And when you look at that block, when you look at that downtown core, we're promoting business, we're promoting our historical, like some of those buildings are 120 years old. And I guess the question that I have is, what, if anything, do we need to do? And there's a bunch of requirements around, to designate a building for historical status. And albeit these are businesses that own these buildings, these aren't owned by the town. So I fully understand that anything that we do, I believe the businesses need to be brought into the discussion around what do they see. And that resulted in the interview and the comments that I made around. And I'll clarify these comments by saying there was never any intent or accusations that I influenced the Chamber of Commerce's strategic plan. But I think in a partnership, and we are in a partnership with the Chamber, it's, we've stepped up in both monetary and other ways to work with and help the Chamber, that any discussions or any actions going forward, I believe the Chamber needs to be part of those discussions. So that was the intent of the comments that I made in the interview. So I guess the question that I have to Council, what do we plan, if anything, that we need to do to recognize our historical resources in the downtown core? Because there's 3 or 4 buildings in that core that could meet the historical designation. And I know there's a lot of work that needs to be involved. And how do we move forth, if we move forth at all? So I guess that would be my comments. So as far as this week coming up, I'm doing the enhanced. I got RD mug on Thursday. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, Mayor Barclay.
All right, thank you very much. And Councillor Wing.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor Barclay. We've been away on vacation for the past couple of weeks, so following the lunch with Cape, I've been a little missing in action. This week, however, MPC is tomorrow. We'll be attending the business visit Wednesday and the tour of Enhance Energy on Thursday, and planning on attending Hillside Vibes on Friday.
Okay, thanks. And I too have been keeping a very low profile. Did do the Cape meeting a couple of weeks ago, and then going to West Vine Meets tomorrow and Enhance on Wednesday. And other than that, I enjoyed some mountain views, hiking in the Rocky Mountains, and nice and quiet. So we will go to upcoming events now, please. Juanita or Director Jenkins, I just want to point out the CD meeting on September 28th, that's when Alberta Munis is.
Yes, Gordon and I and
Okay.
actually Eric have already had discussions about when we can reschedule that meeting, so you should be seeing something come out.
Okay, all right.
Come out soon.
Thank you. Couldn't remember whether I said something about that before or not. Okay, we'll just have a,
Question.
oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Bates.
Yeah, so through to Councillor Harrison, I think. So I heard you say you were going to do mug this Thursday. Did they change? Because they used to be the third Thursday of the odd month. And I see they are down for the September meeting, which is when I know I'm the backup, but I just want to know, are they meeting monthly now? Or are they?
In August they are, as I understand, I haven't heard anything different, so.
That's a total change for them.
Okay, I'll just have somebody make a motion, please, that we accept the upcoming events as information. Councillor Dunham,
Make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
thank you. All in favor? Perfect. And then we'll move to a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Messaros?
Thank you. I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.